Hello, Kay. Jane reminded me that I promised to do a video for you, so here I am in my studio, and I apologize. I kind of forgot over the last couple of weeks. So anyway, what I'm going to show you is some calligraphy techniques without a special pen, and all you have to do is know. I probably assume that you have good handwriting. Um, Based on our age, and we had to take cursive handwriting in school. So it's going to be based on that. So here's an example of what we call modern calligraphy. The thing I want to point out to you, that if you look real close, notice the thick areas of the letters contrasted with the thin. That's what makes it look nice and adds a lot of style to it. That's the the fundamental of this calligraphy is the thick strokes and the thin strokes. Okay, so once that's what I'm going to show you is how to get that, and I'm just using a basic pencil. If you can get a soft pencil, that's better. But any pencil you have, you can even use an ink pen. But I'll use a pencil. So I'm going to send you these two handouts. This just has some examples of what you can do with calligraphy, modern calligraphy. Notice the super thick and super thin, the contrast. Look how beautiful that looks of the word hope. And then there's some examples in this handout. And then there's a little more technical things that you can look through yourself. I'm not going to go through that today. That's going to take too long. But you can look through that. There's an alphabet. There's a page showing basically how to do different letter strokes, some of the similar letter forms, that sort of thing. Here's a complete alphabet with the capitals and the small letters. And this handout shows the strokes that you're going to make and the direction, where to place the pencil or the pen to start with. And now this video is only going to be a few minutes long, so it's not going to droll on forever. And then another page with some tips about how to alter your letter forms. Okay? And then another handout. This I copied from a book I've got. It shows, here's an example, the letter C. Here's all the variations of the letter C that you could use in your lettering with some small letters. Just one more example. Here's the K for your name. All the different subtle variations that you could go through this handout and practice. Some of these you might have to practice to get some of these flourishes on there. Okay, so that's what that handout is. And there's some more information about it. Here's another alphabet that's going to be closer to what you learned in school, if you want to call this the cursive alphabet. It's got the capital and the small letter. Okay, so for this demonstration, I'm going to use this alphabet right here. So I'll refer back to this. I'm going to use a very simple cursive alphabet, one that you're familiar with. Now, I could, one good way to practice, one second, let me grab something. Heck, this is probably what I should use for the video. Take a yellow legal pad. That's probably the best way to practice because it has the guidelines on it. Let's use that instead of the white paper. Okay, so you've got a yellow legal pad. And just one little tip. When I letter, I've got to turn the paper like this. That's probably how you learned it back in school. Okay, that's what gives you your slant. So basically, if you look at my pen is making vertical lines in relation to my body and my wrist. I'm pulling that line straight down toward myself. Let me make it a little darker so you can see it. See how I'm pulling that line straight down toward myself? But in actuality, it becomes a slanted letter relative to the guidelines. So you'll want to twist that paper a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to do the word calligraphy just like this right here. And I'm going to make the small letters 2 spaces high. And I'll make the capital letter about 3 spaces high. Okay. And I'll make this really simple. I think I can fit it on here. Okay, so I'm going to make a very simple a simple C, as you can see. I'm not going to go through each letter and refer back to this. I'll just do it and then show you. So 3 spaces high for the capital letter. Let me start right about in here. Don't be too concerned about staying within the guidelines. Just do it. So notice how I finished off, and that's going to be the connecting stroke. So I lift my pen. If you want to do it like all continuous, like you'd write it like that, you can do that, but I'm going to slow it down a little bit. So the next letter, normally you'd go like this with the A. I'll do it the way we learned in cursive. And notice the L's are what's called ascenders. They're the same height as the capital letter. And because this is larger than you would normally letter your handwriting, you might have to lift your pen and readjust your pencil and readjust your hand so that you're not trying to reach way out over here to do it. You know what I mean? I got to right here, and then I lifted my pencil and kind of reset myself. Now, this may be a challenge because you're not used to lettering at this size. If you want to start out with letters this size right here. I'm doing it bigger so you can see it. Hope I have enough room here. And just letter your normal handwriting. Now notice I'm not going to try to connect the P and the H. I'll just lift my pen up and start right here. Okay. Here's one of the keys of calligraphy. It's like any skill, a musical instrument, playing baseball, muscle memory. Now, I made it look easy because I've been doing this for 40 years. Okay. So don't worry about if your letters don't look exactly right. Just do it. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get. So repetition, repetition, repetition is going to make all the difference in the world. So once you've done your handwriting, just do your normal handwriting. But what you want to do is not make the letters so tight. Like your normal handwriting may look like this, where the letters are very narrow like this. That's going to make it difficult. See how I spread my letters out a little bit, the width of it? Okay, so you've got your lettering done. Now take the pencil and go back over this, and all the downstrokes are the ones that are going to get thick. Any place that you are going down, you're going to thicken. So as I lettered this, this was a slight downstroke. I'm going to just sketch in a thickening right here. And you want to make it a smooth transition. You come up here, and right here it starts to go down. So I'm going to really beef it up pretty thick so you can see it. And right here it starts to go up. That's where it needs to transition. Okay. And you can see how there's a little space in there. Let me zoom this in a little bit closer. Even closer. Let that focus. Okay. So you can see how I thickened it with a little space. I'll come back and fill that in. So upstroke. Now this started to go down right here. And here's the transition right here. Now this is going to be a little bit trickier because I'm going to actually put a little line across there to make that a stroke, make it look like a stroke. And I'm trying to keep these all about the same width. Now this is where, your L's need to be pretty balloony so that you have some space in here. And if you don't have enough room, you could always go on the outside of that a little bit. This one is a little inconsistent. That's all right. But you can see where the transition is right here and then right here. You want it to be a smooth transition. This would square off the top of it just slightly. Right there is the transition. I'm going to move it over. See how I squared that off? Right there is the transition. And right there is the transition. And then square, that's stroke like the G, the I, the A. Square that off a little bit. and you're going to bring that down. That's your normal downward stroke as you do cursive. See, that's a normal. You go up like this, and then you're coming down. So you're only thickening what would be your normal downward stroke. And then here, right there, it transitions. And this on the R, you know how we're taught to kind of go like this. Make it a loop. Actually make a loop. And then you can just fill that in. And then this one turns right here. There's the transition. Here's the A again. Square that off a little bit so it looks like a stroke. These are only the downward strokes. Now see, this loop is so small that I probably should have kind of cheated and gone on the outside of it more, but this is just for practice. Downward stroke, transition. This one, I'm going to put the H on the outside because I can see I don't have much room. And that transition, see how this jumps up? It's not a smooth curve like that. It boom. So it stops right there. So you don't want to transition up into an upward stroke. Transition right there. Square these off. What I like about the legal pad, it's got those guidelines and it's soft. So if you're using a pencil, the paper has a little, couldn't even see what I was doing there. It has a little give to it. And I think it's more conducive to freeing up your pen instead of you don't want to do this on like one sheet of paper on a Formica countertop. Have a nice thick pad under it. It works a lot better. And then you can come back and darken these in. So this would be the same thing if you were going to use a pen. And then you can kind of look at these and look at the consistency of the thickness of those downward strokes, and you can kind of tweak it a little bit. The key is having that transition in the right place. Look how beautiful that looks. The key is it's the thick and the thin. You got the contrast of the thick and the thin. That's the whole key to this. Now later on, if this is something you get into, I'll show you there's several kinds of pen points that facilitate this in the pen point itself. But for right now, just use a pencil or a ballpoint pen. Same thing. But again, I would practice, where, see how I kind of lift my pen and then start over instead of connecting them. Try this as an exercise. Instead of trying to connect all the letters, I kind of lift my hand and reposition because it is larger than you're used to lettering. You can't really see it, but I'm lifting my hand right here and I'm moving my hand a little bit. Let me see if I can show that just a little bit with my hand. You'll see it this size. Now I had to reposition my hand. So my hand is basically in the same position all the time. That's why I'm lifting my hand up just slightly and moving it. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm just repositioning my hand so it's moving across the page in that same position. If I were to keep my hand in the same place, I'd be twisting out like this, so and I'm moving my hand, but also my whole arm. Okay. So that's something you can practice. And it's just repetition. Fill up a whole page. Just pick out somebody's name, or I like the word calligraphy because it's got ascenders that go above the guideline and descenders. And it's got, a lot of the letters that it's got the H, which is kind of like the N. So that's where you can practice. So that's how I did this. I did this with a black ink pen, and then I filled in the downward strokes and just filled those in. Okay, that's about the whole video. I'll mail this stuff to you. And you can see in this one, I exaggerated the thick. And so I got extreme contrast. And that's where it adds the beauty. Look at the extreme contrast. This is the thickness of my ink pen. And I must have practiced this about a dozen times just to get it to flow. And I broke the rules and went below where the guideline would be. This P is much out of proportion to the O and the L. So that's something you can kind of play around with. But again, just practice over and over and over again. Just let your arm free up. If you do it small, that's okay too. And you can kind of play around with just one word where you're moving your whole arm. With this, I was using my whole arm and just keeping my pen and my fingers stiff. This is done with the arm because it's so big. The whole arm, and I'm just keeping my hand rigid, my fingers and everything else. I'm not trying to move my fingers like this. It's done with the arm. When you're smaller, like this example right here, then you're using more of your fingers. Okay, that's the end of the video. Practice and shoot me an email with or a text, photograph some of your work, and I'll comment on it. And in the meantime, I'll send you these two handouts, and we'll just go from there. And if it's something that really you really enjoy doing, I can show you a lot more. Okay. Good luck.